Generally speaking, in schools, there's a lot more structure in classrooms than there is between, and corridor areas are a perennial issue. I'm not confident that in most London schools you don't take your life into your hands when you go out to the corridors, and it messes up the beginnings and ends of lessons. It has knock-on in all sorts of directions.
John Bayley arrives at Salisbury School in Edmonton, North London, one of the poorest parts of the capital. The school's focus has been mainly on improving what happens inside the classroom. Now it wants to tackle the problem of corridor behaviour and changeovers between 50-minute lessons that can take as much as 15 minutes.
The children need to feel that there is some urgency from getting from A to B.
It's kind of all about socialisation, isn't it? They just want to be having that time together rather than thinking, OK, I've got to get into class to learn.
Let's go. Let's get moving, please. Come on. Come on, don't stand around. You've got a lesson to go to. Let's go, please. Thank you.
Is the problem changing, getting worse, getting better? Has it always been a pain in the neck? What's it look like?
I think it has got a little worse because there appear to be fewer staff out on the corridors, and that's, I think, given the students a little bit more opportunity to wander without being challenged.
Obviously, stage one is collecting information, isn't it?
The school has 16 cameras in the corridors, and it's Tammy Duke's job to monitor them.
OK, what do we learn from this? What do you see in the corridors? What do we find out from looking at this footage?
Most changeovers generally take between 10 and 15 minutes for them to actually start moving. The cameras are motion censored, so they will only tape while there's someone actually in the corridor. So for the green area is when it's taping, and the blue areas are when there's no one actually in the corridor. And as you can see from that, it's a large amount of green, where we should have a good 40-minute block of blue between each lesson.
There is more or less always life.
In the corridors.
Of some kind. If that was a life detector,
yes,
it would be telling us that the corridors are very social places.
Definitely.
Drama teacher Robert Cochrane takes John on a tour of the school.
OK, I'm going to tuck myself into this corner here and watch what happens.
OK.
Does this look...
A group of student leaders help out with gathering data.
I went around timing how long it took everybody to get into lessons. After lunchtime and playtime, I found that the music corridor took like 15 minutes just for everybody to get in the corridor and to be quiet.
I think most of the time it's happening because students ain't got interest in that lesson. So they will decide to walk around and they'll think, oh, why should I go to that lesson? They don't interest me. Yeah. It bores me.
I've decided I'll take over as headmaster here starting tomorrow. So what advice are you going to give me? How am I going to get these corridors cleared?
I think more punishment.
I think we should have more teachers out on the corridors.
Yeah. Next, what do the teachers think?
What more would it be reasonable to expect teachers to be doing here, teaching staff in their classrooms?
I think there's some that do loads and others that don't venture outside their classroom and, in fact, don't even ensure that all of their students are in their class.
Like in any school, you're going to have people, you're going to have good practice that you see all the time, and people stopping students and saying, that's not acceptable, right, move along to your lesson, etc., etc. And you're going to have, unfortunately, staff that will walk right by it and not see that as part of their remit.
If you're doing a back-to-back lesson, let's say, you know, you let your class out on time because you don't want them in the corridor before time. So you let them out on time, you're going to tidy up or clear up from that lesson, clear the board, change your overhead projection for your next lesson, which makes it very difficult for you to get to the door and out into the corridor.
We talked to some students, and Their basic solution to the problem was people need to toughen up. It's in English, we get given 5 minutes to get to the lesson, we're not in with 5 minutes, they do something about it. If we just said to some departments, here's what they do in the English department, do it everywhere.
I absolutely agree. If we all are singing from the same page, that's it would work. The more relentless you are, the less you have to fight in the long run.
We'd have to have a whole school plan, and we'd all have to really follow it, right down to TAs as well. We'd all have to do it.
John meets up with the senior leadership team to thrash out a plan.
This isn't a school where you get told to F off in the corridor or elbowed out of the way. You just get a slight feeling that you're interrupting someone else's party. It's more like that, isn't it?
And I don't think this problem is insurmountable because exactly what you said, John. You've got these young people in the school who in class know the protocols and know how to behave, but yet when you're on the corridor with them, you're a bit like, why are you behaving like this? They're like different kids almost, aren't they?
There needs to be a policy which tells people what the expectations are. You're expected to be in a lesson 5 minutes after the allotted time. Staff members are expected to be by their door. And so it's the practical things that we're going to do and whose job it is that goes in that policy.
3 weeks later, and it's launch day for the new corridor policy. 220 posters are being put up all over the school. 20 new clocks are also on display, so there'll be no excuse for poor timekeeping.
This is a plan that Janice and I have worked up following our action research a few weeks ago. And we had written an actual policy for what the expectations are of staff and students in the corridors, so starting lessons and ending lessons.
Meet students at your door with a friendly smile. Direct students to lessons if there are any are loitering around your door or area. Do not line students up, but get them straight into the room. How do they respond to that? Because this issue of being on the door at the beginning and end of lessons is often vexatious. Do you feel like you won the day with that?
They seemed quite positive, didn't they, about it?
And we said, we understand what it's like when you're teaching back-to-back. We know that you've got to kind of wipe your board or click for your whiteboard and get it ready for the next lesson, but actually the expectation is that you're at the door.
Special assemblies are being held to highlight unacceptable corridor behaviour.
We've been doing some research and we're going to show you what we saw. Fooling about. No urgency. Anyone would think they were just standing at a youth club or a bus stop. You can see there is an issue. School is about being sociable, it really is. But we also, the very important purpose of you being here is about your futures and your education. So corridors are for moving in, not meeting in. I know each and every single one of you can do this, and your teachers will help you and support you in reminding you to do this. No, it's good, really good. The students responded beautifully, even with the eruption of laughter. I just think it's the fact that nobody's ever talked to them about it. I mean, it is a bit mad, isn't it?
It's after break. Will lessons now be able to start on time?
Right, can't move those kids along.
The Year 11 student leaders have been drafted in to help clear the corridors.
Thank you. Thank you. Is the playground cleared? Excellent. Well, lessons are about to start, so... Come on, RS class, let's go. We need to speed it up. Come on, let's go. Okay, brilliant, really good. It's 11:50. The better, even better if your jackets were off and you were sat ready to learn. Right, that's good. That class is already off and learning. Not bad. I think the last child was into these classes at 54, so that's 4 minutes past, which is kind of the window that they've got to get into class. Not bad. Better than the 12 minutes that it was. Good stuff.
But after lunch, it soon becomes clear that not everyone's doing their bit.
Still, there's just not enough staff coming out of their classrooms. How do you get them to come out of their classrooms? I just expect extra people to be out. Well done. I did say thank you to people that were supporting. You know, thanks so much for being out in the corridor, it's really helpful. But what do you do with staff that are late to their own lessons?
OK, talk me through the day.
Really positive start, great assembly, kids really seem to take the message on board, staff seem to have taken the message on board, and then this afternoon being out on the corridor, just a real lack of staff presence.
It is a resilient culture. It's not going to change in
Overnight,
5 minutes
because
flat.
I'm impatient.
But one of the things that I'm wondering about is maybe we've taken the staff a bit for granted, because I might think these people, you know, 1 minute they're telling me to teach a wonderful lesson and have a really good plenary and get everything ready for that when the next class comes in, and now I'm meant to be standing out in the corridor and I'm meant to be doing the whole lot.
John Bayley needs to go back to the teachers.
Is there a clear enough message from the school saying you need to be at that door, and so that means that your plenary needs to be finished by 4 or 5 minutes to a student, you need to get your next lesson ready?
If the school was happy, but they'd have to realise that that's cutting into the previous lessons' teaching time.
So it's a trade-off, isn't it, to get 55 minutes proper teaching? Could you find another hour and write down a set of guidelines, look at what you think would be necessary to get one lesson ended and one lesson put out? Could the 4 of you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
It's 6 weeks later, and John Bayley is back to see how things are going. But the news isn't as good as he'd hoped. The school tells John staff have been preoccupied by a recent inspection. So what happened to the planned set of guidelines for teachers?
We had that meeting with staff at the end of last time, and they were going to give us a protocol for the how you finish a lesson. Viz, don't run the plenary up to the last minute.
That hasn't actually happened. What has happened is a verbal version of that, and it is something that needs to happen, I think.
Despite the absence of guidelines, things seem to be improving, with more evidence of staff out on the corridors.
How are we doing on this, Bob? Is it getting better?
Not too bad, it's getting a lot better. Mr. Cochran, lesson, quickly. Yeah? Good, well done. Okay, come on, guys.
It's definitely had impact, but I think it's a bit of a long road, and I think it's going to take longer to embed with the students. I think they move quicker to lessons and the key messages are there. But I think actually the internal motivation about wanting to be at the lesson dead on time to start is going to be a longer journey.